So again, good evening, everyone. This is Laura Chesney-Gadd. I'm the director for the 10 Outstanding Young Americans program for the United States JCs. And we're going to talk about several different items on the agenda today. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background about TOYA. Some of you are probably very familiar with the TOYA program, but for those who may not be as familiar, just want to give you a little bit of a background. And then we're going to talk about the nomination process for TOYA, specifically for 2014, although it is a relatively standard procedure from year to year. I'm looking for some feedback from you as well. So for those of you who might have attended a TOYA program in the past, or maybe have heard information from others who have attended, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that. And then I also want to find out from each of you whether or not you run some type of recognition program, whether it's called an Outstanding Young something within your chapter or your state. So we'll talk about that as well. Again, as you have questions, feel free to jump in and ask those. So just a little bit of a background about the 10 Outstanding Young Americans program. It was initially conceived by Durward Howes in 1934. He actually published a book called Americans Young Men, and he did that in 1934, 35, and 36. And in that book were his own selections for 12 outstanding young men that he knew about in America. And in 1937, he also published the America's Young Men book, but cut the list down to 10, and we still continue to only have the 10 outstanding young Americans now versus just men. In 1938, he actually gave the rights to Future magazine, which is the former publication of the United States Junior Chamber. He gave them the exclusive rights to publish his selections, and that was kind of, in essence, the birth of the 10 Outstanding Young Americans program for the United States JCs. And through 1941, the editors of Future magazine actually selected the 10 men who would be honored each year. And then starting in 1941, basically till the present day, now a panel of judges select those individuals from the nominations that we receive. In 1985, when the United States Junior Chamber allowed women into the organization, they did change the name from the 10 Outstanding Young Men to the 10 Outstanding Young Americans. And since then, we have been honoring not just men, but also women with the 10 Outstanding Young Americans honor. We're working on really developing more information and kind of housing an archive, if you will, of information about the TOYA program. So if you go to usjcs.org/TOYA, you'll find some of that information available to you there. And we'll be adding more information as we have the time to get things updated and get information digitized. As you can imagine, a lot of the information we have currently is not in a digital format, especially after 75 years. You know, the last 10 years or so, we have it in digital format, but prior to that, it's still in VHS format. Some of it is still in reel film as well as paper. So it's a long process to get that digitized, but continue to look to that website for more information. A little more information about the trophy. For those of you who haven't seen the trophy, there's an image of it here. And this trophy was actually created by Arthur Kraft, who was a TOYA recipient in 1954, and felt that there needed to be something that really represented what this award meant to those who were receiving it. He named the trophy Jason, which stands for JC's Active Youth Serving Our Nation. It's a beautiful trophy with a marble base, and the hands are nickel-plated, and the trophy weighs almost 12 pounds. So the honorees have the opportunity to handle it a little bit before the actual event, so they can get used to the weight of it and the size of it and holding it in an appropriate way so it doesn't break and so they don't drop it. And an interesting fact for you is that the manufacturer of the TOYA Trophy, which is R.S. Olson, also manufactures the Oscar Awards. So our award is right next to those awards that everybody sees on TV once a year, coming up here in about a month. So it's really an honor to have that company who manufactures some really prestigious awards like the Oscars also manufacturing and holding the mold for our TOYA Trophy as well. So let's move on to the nomination piece, and I think this is what everyone is on the call for. So let's talk about the process for nominating someone. Couple pieces of information, the important pieces here. The nominations are due at the end of February, on February 28th. There is a nomination form. It's a 2014 nomination form that must be used for that submission. That's available on the usjcs.org/TOYA. And over on the left-hand side of that site, you'll find a link to be able to get that nomination form. If you want to, you can also email toya@usjcs.org, and I can send you the nomination that way if that works easier. But that form does have to be used for that nomination to be submitted. We do require that the nominee sign the form. We do have digital signature available, but the nominee must be doing that, otherwise we won't consider that nomination. And many people think that they have to have that person vetted through a local program or a state program for them to be submitted onto the national level for TOYA, and that's not required. So you don't have to currently do any type of recognition program or Outstanding Young American in your state or your chapter for that person to be nominated. So it's a really nice way for a state that maybe doesn't do a program to still be able to submit someone if they wish, or even an individual can submit someone if they want to. Again, don't have to be vetted through a local or a state program. Once the nomination forms are completed, those can just be emailed to the TOYA email address, again, toya@usjcs.org, and we will collect all of those. And just a little bit of information as far as the process. So the nominations are due on February 28th, and then throughout the month of March, the judging is done, and there are 3 different levels of judging that are done. There's a preliminary level, and then there's the first round, and then the final round. And then typically early April is when the honorees are notified if they have been selected. We do notify the top 25 that they were selected or that they made the top 25, but then the actual honorees, those top 10 honorees, will be notified in early April. When you're looking at nominating someone, you want to look to make sure that you're finding someone who has been creating positive change in their community. And that can be their local community, the statewide community, or national community. And you can see on this slide here the 10 different categories in which we consider nominees. There used to be 13. We did consolidate them down to 10. So you can see the different categories, so it gives you a very wide range of individuals that you can nominate. So from the business field to legal to education to scientific, medical innovation, really a lot of opportunity and a lot of variety for those nominees. Any questions about the nomination process? Any questions about how to submit it, what information to submit? Well, I'm waiting to see if anybody has any questions. You can see here on this next slide, I just gave a couple screenshots of what that nomination form looks like. It's 6 pages long, which may seem a little daunting. The first page is just general information. The second page is general information about the nominee. So where they live, how can we get in touch with them? And then for the next several pages, it does go through the questions that need to be answered and filled out for us to use in the selection or in the judging process. So really we're looking for what type of education they have, works that have been published, so books or articles, and then really we want to know what it is about this particular individual that makes them worthy of being considered for the TOYA honor. So again, that's for the 3 or 4 pages of that nomination. We give you some limitations as far as the number of characters for the paragraphs that are being written. And this is, while something you can do, it's also something, depending on the individual that you are wanting to nominate, they can fill out themselves. You also can choose to give it to, if they have a publicist or they have an assistant or someone else who knows a wide variety of what they are doing, they can fill out the nomination form as well. It does not need to be filled out by you, and it doesn't have to be filled out by the nominee either. But again, we do require that nominee's signature on it, and that signature basically is validating that they've read the information that's being submitted and validating to its accuracy and making sure that the information being provided is correct. So it doesn't look like there are any questions about the nomination process. Again, it's a really easy process. The form is easy. It is an editable document, so you can fill out right in that form that, again, you can get on the usjcs.org/TOYA website. So as we're going through some other information, you can let me know if you have questions going forward. So one of the things I'd like to ask, for those of you who have been to TOYA, are there certain things about the TOYA program that you like? Is there a certain, what's your favorite element of the program? Also, we would be willing and interested in hearing any positive feedback you have, and also any recommendations that you might have for things that we could change or things that we could do differently to help this program be even better than it is. So does anybody want to share what their favorite element of the TOYA program is if you've attended? Is there anyone who has not attended the TOYA program before who's on the call? Looking at a couple of the names, I know there's a couple individuals who have attended before. Have some of you never attended before? So Chris from Minnesota said her favorite part is love hearing everyone's story and that it's very inspiring. I would definitely agree with that. It's one of my favorite things about the organization is this particular program and being able to honor these individuals, and always an inspiring time to hear what they've done. Anybody else have a favorite part to the TOYA program? Okay, you can always continue to put that in there, and I'll read them as they come through. So the next thing that I want to talk about, again, getting some feedback from you, is any ideas that you have to help us increase the awareness of this program, the prestige of the program, to those outside of the organization. I think that we all understand and really truly feel that this program is a huge honor and something that people really should walk away with and feel very proud about. And we always look back at, the stories we hear about Elvis Presley and the fact that he carried this award with him after he won it all over when he was traveling, and the fact that this was the only non-musical award that he accepted in person. And really, what can we do to raise this award back to that level that it is so impactful to someone that they would take it with them everywhere they went? So does anyone have any ideas of how we can help to do that, help increase that prestige and increase that awareness of this program, of the award and the program? I know we're working with outside organizations, not necessarily just relying on the nominations that are coming in from chapters and from members, Although really that's where we want to see those nominations coming in from, because we want you to have made those connections with those individuals to help you in your efforts within the community. So we want to see that, but also working with outside organizations and individuals to help us identify some of these people to help get that awareness back up. Someone did say here a national sponsor, large company, or large media presence. Absolutely, and we do work to try and find sponsors. As you know, in the economy that we have, it's not always the easiest, but it's something we're really working to refocus efforts on, especially with the TOYA program, is to try and find sponsor, and preferably a long-term sponsor, not just here's the sponsor from Washington because we are in Seattle. And a large media presence too. We do send out press releases, but really working absolutely on getting more of those out and more follow-up with those to try and get the media to come to the event. Higher profile winners, someone had a suggestion. Absolutely. I think the more name recognition that individual has, the more potential we have of getting that media presence for the event, which would obviously raise that awareness and prestige of the program. And someone else wrote here, Chad from South Dakota said, for me personally, it would have to be seeing how humble the nominees are even after they receive their award. And I think those are probably some of my favorite honorees that I've experienced over the last several years, are those ones who get up there and really say that they don't feel that they're worthy of it or that they shouldn't have received it. I think those sometimes are the individuals who deserve to be recognized the most. So that helps to increase awareness of it as well. And also, Chad, that may have been also what your favorite part of the event is, but either way, definitely fits in. Any other feedback you have about TOYA? Again, your favorite element of it or ideas to help us with making it a bigger and better program. And if you don't have any now or between now and the end of the session, feel free, any ideas that you have, please send them to toya@usjcs.org. We are working to really make this program even bigger and better than it is, and part of the way to do that is to get some more ideas in and really listen to what people are wanting and how we can make this program even better. So the next part I want to walk into is talking about what you do in your local chapter or even in your state. And do you have some type of recognition program that you run to be able to honor and recognize individuals similar to how we do with TOYA? So, does your local chapter or your state organization run some type of recognition program? Doesn't have to be called Outstanding Young whatever, but do you run some type of recognition program? And if so, or if you do, why? And if you don't, why don't you? So if anyone is on the phone who can actually speak versus having to type, feel free to do that by phone if you want to. Otherwise, feel free to type in your responses about whether or not you do a program. So one of the responses here, Minnesota does. I happen to know that. I live in Minnesota. Minnesota has a 10 Outstanding Young Minnesotans program that they combine with the Outstanding Young Farmer program. And from experience, I know that that's held every December. And I know someone in here had said that they asked if you use phone or chat. And Heather, are you able to speak?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Excellent.
Oh, okay. There you are. I'm like, I was trying to. Yep, I'm from Minnesota, and we run the program. We run it every year, like you just said, in conjunction with the Outstanding Young Farmer. And I think we run it, again, the same reasons the National does. It's a great inspirational event. It's a great way to recognize people from within our local communities. and then have the opportunity to pass them on to national for some national recognition.
So can you talk a little bit about where Minnesota goes to find their nominees?
Sure. Well, first we open it up to the local chapters in the state, and we try to do trainings and inform chapters of some good places to look, like in the young professionals groups or entrepreneur groups, or perhaps members in their own chapters, or a well-known community member in their communities. We usually have an earlier deadline for the local chapters, and then after those come in, we open up the nominations to non-JC groups. So it might be somebody like MinPost or the young YPN groups that know somebody that's not a JC, and they're not a JC, but they can submit them as well.
Great. And how many do you think of the nominations come in through the chapter versus outside resources?
I would only know the last couple of years, and I think it's probably 75 to 80% chapter.
Okay.
But I know the last couple of years we could probably do some more outside advertising and promotion of the event as well.
Okay. Great. Thank you. I appreciate your feedback on that.
Yep.
Anybody else on the call, does your chapter or state run some type of recognition program? I hadn't seen, other than Minnesota, I hadn't seen anything else come up that other states or chapters did. So what I'd like to recommend for you is, I know for a lot of people, especially if you've been to TOYA, that event can seem really overwhelming and seem like a lot of work, and therefore maybe the reason why your chapter or your state is not running a program like that. So what I'd like to challenge you with is for your chapter and or your state organization to run some type of recognition program. And it doesn't have to be 10. Start small. Choose 1, 2, 3 people that you can honor. I know that there's a chapter in Minnesota that they do Distinguished Young or Distinguished Service Awards. Michigan also does Distinguished Service Awards. It's not an Outstanding Young American program, but they choose different categories. So you could choose to honor 1 to 3 people. So maybe it is a law enforcement official that you honor. Maybe it's a teacher that you're honoring, someone on the school board. You could choose some specific categories to have those honorees in, which would help you a little bit in narrowing your search for finding those potential honorees. And like I said, start small, 1 to 3 people. You don't need to have a huge banquet to do it either. Again, start small. If you have a year-end event, so maybe it's your awards and installation that you have at the end of the year to celebrate your year as a chapter, as a state, and you inaugurate your new president, that's a good opportunity to have that award. It introduces that honoree, if they don't already know about the JCs, to all the great things that you're doing in your community and the positive impact that you're having in your community. And that's where you can start it. Or if you have a big, maybe one of your months you have a very large membership meeting, for whatever reason it happens to be the one that the majority of the chapter or the majority of the state attends, that's another great time to do it. Do it in conjunction with something you already do. Make it special for the honoree. It doesn't cost too much to have a plaque. You don't have to have something as grandiose right away as the TOYA Trophy that is provided, but something small, some small token that person can take and put on a shelf in their office or at their home or hang on their wall that shows that they received this award. And make sure that you put your chapter or your state's name on that so that all those people, all their friends and family and coworkers who see that award know where that award came from. So again, keep it small, 1 to 3 people. You don't have to do anything grandiose to start with, but it's really a great way for you to start honoring and recognizing individuals in your community, individuals in your state, for the great work that they're doing and the positive impact and the positive change that they're making in the community as well. So again, I challenge you to do that, whether you need to do it at the chapter level or the state level. And then once you do have that or do run that program, submit those individuals on for consideration for TOYA. So no one else had responded that their chapter or their state did a recognition program other than Minnesota. And I believe Minnesota, I don't know that every year, but most years forward on at least one or two, if not more, of those TOYA recipients, or in Minnesota's case, the 10 Outstanding Young Minnesotans honor, they submit on for TOYA. And some of the comments that I've heard from other states or community, local chapters that are doing some type of recognition program, and one of their hesitations, if you will, of submitting them on for TOYA is the TOYA nomination process. And depending on how you do the nomination process for your local or your state organization, it could be daunting. But one of the ways to make it not difficult at all to submit that person on for TOYA, use the United States Junior Chamber's TOYA nomination form. It doesn't have to be the exact form, but get all of the information captured that we asked for in the USJC TOYA nomination form. I happen to know that Minnesota does that. The 10 Outstanding Young Minnesotan Outstanding Young Farmer Program Manager for Minnesota last year contacted me and said, were there changes made to the form, and if so, can I have it? And they model their state nomination form after the national nomination form, so that when they want to submit that person on for TOYA consideration, all they have to do is cut and paste the information into the national form, submit that to the honoree to sign, and then submit it on to us. And the USJC's does that because we've actually modeled ours after JCI. And the form that we use, the questions we ask, are the same questions that JCI asks for their 10 Outstanding Young Persons Award as well. So it makes it easy on us to submit it on up to JCI if we so choose. So any other suggestions or any other hesitations people have about, again, running their own program in their chapter in their state, or hesitations you have about submitting people that you've recognized on for the TOYA recognition? So I'm waiting to see if anybody has any comments about that. One of the things to mention too, if you are running your own chapter or state program, a recommendation I have is still, even if it's only one person, you could choose to not always give that award out every year. You could choose to hand select someone to give that award to. If you choose to have a nomination process, make sure you have some people who are going to be good judges of that. The president would be good, whether it's the president of the chapter, if it's a local recognition program, or the state president, if it's a state recognition program. Make sure they're one of the judges. You could find other individuals who would be qualified to judge those. If you have a sponsor for your state or your chapter or an event that's going to be tied to where you're giving this recognition, that is another person, finding a representative from that sponsor who would be willing to be a judge. The mayor of your city, the mayor of the city in which the event is going to take place when they are honored, the governor of your state is another good person. And on the kind of local side, if you will, ask your assigned national vice president. I'm sure they would love and be honored to read those nominations that are submitted and help you choose who should be recognized. I'm always a resource as well. I'd be happy to look through them and judge them as needed if you want to. So just some ideas for you to help you consider running something at the local level or at the state level to honor these individuals who are really doing amazing things. That's all I had for the session today. I wanted to open it up again. Are there any questions? Questions about anything that I talked about? Do you have questions about something that I didn't talk about, maybe expecting me to cover something that I didn't cover? Please let me know if you have any of those questions. I want to make sure that you're walking away with all the information that you wanted to know about before you called in. Chris from Minnesota asked, are there any fees? No, there is no fee to submit someone for the TOYA consideration. And just so you know, when an honoree is selected, the honoree's airfare is covered. Their hotel is covered for Friday and Saturday night. In this case, it will be Baltimore. The event is going to be held on Saturday, June 28th. In Baltimore. So their airfare to Baltimore is covered. Their hotel Friday and Saturday night in Baltimore is covered. Their meal, their registration, if you will, for the banquet and ceremony Saturday night is covered for them, plus one guest. They also get lunch because we do a presentation for them at lunch. So there's not a cost to the honoree either. So no cost for you as a state or a local or an individual to submit a nomination, and then really no cost for the honoree to attend as well. And someone else posted on here, I co-chaired the Pennsylvania banquet a few years ago, and we asked questions from the winners and put the answers on the slideshow. Example, favorite movie, TV show, colors, books. Everyone liked it because you got to know them personally. You know, that's a really great idea and maybe something we can utilize on Facebook for the TOYA honorees. It'd be kind of fun to ask them some of those fun questions that you can learn a little bit about them before you get to meet them in Baltimore. So thank you for that suggestion. And then another question came up was, are supplementary materials allowed to be included with the nomination, for example, a video? For the initial nomination, all that is required and all that we will accept are answers to the questions on the nomination form. As we get through the process and as they're narrowed down and we've selected the top 10, at that point in time we would accept some videos because that's something that can be incorporated into their introduction at TOYA. But really for right now, it's just the written words that you have on the nomination form. I think we would end up getting so much information, especially in this digital age, for better or for worse, would get so much information about nominees that it would take forever for us to kind of muddle through everything and look at everybody's information in order to make the decision. But great question. Any other questions? So on the screen here, again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask those before we wrap things up here. But as you go forward, if you have any questions, whether it's, again, about submitting the nomination form, about running your own program, if you need help with anything, if you have any ideas that you want to share for how we can make TOYA better, how we can make any of the programs better as it relates to TOYA, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. You can see my phone number there as well as my email address. And always, as I mentioned before, the usjcs.org/TOYA, you can find information there, and we're building that site as we're going forward and working to really make that a much more robust site than it has been in the past, and making sure we have a lot of information out there for you to be able to view, as well as for past honorees and anybody potentially looking at submitting someone for TOYA. So I'll do one last shout out if there are any questions that anybody has before we wrap things up. And I haven't seen anything come through, but again, like I said, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm here to help you in any way that I can. Thanks so much for joining the call tonight, and everybody have a great rest of your evening. Bye-bye.